I would imagine, like your humble and obedient servant here, you had kind of a miserable weekend with the news, the endless news that has been coming out of the Middle East of this horror, the terror attack against the Israelis and the response by the IDF against the Gazans. I want to be clear about something before I get started today. I consider what Hamas did, the slaughter of innocent citizens of Israel, the Israelis, the Jews. That is not a military operation. That is not one army attacking another army. That is a pogrom. It is a war crime. It is a slaughter. It is vicious and vile. And I understand. I understand. I can't empathize. I've tried to make this clear the past few days. I understand the rage and the poverty and the sickness and the denial of their human rights that the Palestinians have been dealing with for 75 years. I understand how rage can build up. I understand how people can explode. But to slaughter men, women, and children, to take civilians hostage, that is not warfare. I mean, I understand the casualties of war is everything and everybody. I do get that. But this was deliberately targeting civilians, men, women, children, old people. That's bullshit. That cannot, under any circumstances, as far as I'm concerned, be justified. And I've said the same thing when the Israeli military sent missiles into Gaza or into villages in the occupied territories. Killing civilians, targeting civilians. Of course, civilians are going to be killed. I mean, that's just the nature of this god-awful goddamn thing that we call war. But the deliberate slaughter of people on the street who are in a SUV going to a friend's house on a holy day, or standing in a bus shelter waiting for a bus to pick them up and to drive by and just slaughter them. And I can add that the Jews have been dealing with this for thousands of years. This is not new to Jews. As far as the Palestinians are concerned, this is not new to them either. They have been brutalized by the British, by the Turks, by how many different people have overrun the Middle East. And if you talk to the people of Gaza, they will tell you they've been brutalized by the Israelis. I hate this. It's just impossible for me to comprehend. American television is slanted towards what the Jews of Israel are experiencing, although a couple of the networks have tried to show some kind of comparison, or not a comparison, but some kind of balance with what the people of Gaza are suffering. And this is the horror of this whole thing. The people holding and firing the guns and the rockets are indiscriminately killing civilians. By any definition, this is terrorism. Oh man, let me mention my sponsor tonight is Stephen King. Thank you, Stephen. Stephen is a regular sponsor, has become. This is Stephen's message. I usually agree with you, but Attorney General Doolittle Garland honorable, as you said? What the fuck? How many months were we waiting for Garland to move on 45? Trump. How long did it take for Garland to finally do something about 45 by appointing Jack Smith as special counsel after his first prosecution of the J6 schmucks on the ground? And maybe Garland wouldn't have done anything about 45 until being embarrassed by the J6 committee hearing. He says he follows the law and facts. Bullshit. Garland is a political animal. And let's not forget how he buckled under the pressure from the right-wing nutfucks on Hunter Biden, elevating David Weiss to special counsel. I don't care if he's Jewish, Muslim, Mormon, or Martian. He needs to be replaced in the next administration. Subscribe, sponsor, keep it lit. All right. From Stephen King, who is a frequent sponsor to this program, disagreeing with my characterization of Garland, which I appreciate. I welcome. Although Stephen King's disagreement is mild. I've had death threats over the course of my radio career, such as it is. But thank you, Stephen, very much for your comments. If you would like to sponsor, and I hope you will. By the way, last week, the listeners to this podcast did it again. Thank you very much, and rose to the point of, or contributed to the point of keeping the ship afloat. So, when my erstwhile partner and webmaster let me know what the results were from contributions, I was able to say, yay, another week, George. George being my webmaster. So thank you to everybody who contributed. Thank you very, very much. It is, it's very appreciated. And I have to say that right now it's very necessary to keep this little podcast going. Really. Okay? Okay. Hundreds of civilians have been killed in Israel and Gaza. It's going to approach thousands very quickly, especially in Gaza. Gaza is, as you've heard a million times now, one of the most densely populated strips of land on the planet. It borders both Israel and Egypt. And I want to share with you a little bit about Gaza, because we have to understand, we just do, the consequences of Israel's response to these acts of terror. And I am not going to pass judgment on the response or the provocation. What the hell can I say? I don't live there. I'm not a Jew. I'm not a Muslim. There's so very little that someone like me can add to this fire, this horror that just will never end. The conflict in the Middle East, there is no resolution to this. This is the past, the present, and the future for the people who live in Israel, Palestine. This is it. It cannot get any better. There has been too many atrocities from the standpoint of the people of Gaza and the people of Israel. Too much terror. Too many mothers screaming and wailing and rending their garments because they're lifting up their slaughtered children, their kids with their arms and heads blown off, their kids gunned down in the streets of a village in Israel. There has been too much. I just don't think that it's humanly possible to make this end. I don't. 2-state, 1-state, it's not going to work. So what is the solution, Malloy? There isn't one. Some situations are insoluble. You can build as many walls and fences. Look what happened to this sophisticated wall. 30 miles long or whatever it was, put up by the Israelis. Electronically configured barriers going deep under the ground to keep Gazans from entering Israel. And look how long it took to smash 30 holes in it. Anybody's thinking about a wall on our southern border, wake the fuck up. A wall. Jesus. And the Palestinians look at walls and they look at restrictions and they become furious. Because, as I've said before, they consider it to be their land to the same degree and extent that the Jews who came from all over the world to settle in this godforsaken place considered it to be their land. That cannot be resolved. The images and the videos of this devastation that's going on, it's just horrifying. It's just horrifying. If you can watch the Israelis being grabbed by Hamas terrorists, slapped around, beat and kicked, corpses being dragged and kicked, women and children being pushed into vehicles to be taken as hostages. If you can watch that without feeling just rage inside of you, then you better get to a doctor, because you're already fucking dead if you don't have an emotional response to that. If you can't see and feel the mothers in Gaza screaming and wailing because their children are under a bombed out building, mountains of rubble that have crashed down on families, apartment buildings. This is not war. This is mutual slaughter. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.